It's the most talked about movie of the year, but is The Substance really that controversial?
You are one. You can't escape from yourself.
Join BP, Coop, special guest Pablo, and myself for this episode where we discuss The Substance.
You know, bump it up. You got to pump it up.
This is the Complete Guide to Horror Movies podcast. First off, if you haven't watched The Substance, then what are you doing? Go stream it on Mubi if you're in America, or go see it in cinemas, then come back and listen to this review.
And Mark, get those knees up! You got it!
In The Substance, Demi Moore stars as Elizabeth Sparkle, a former actress turned fitness TV star who is fired by Dennis Quaid after turning 50.
At 50? Well, it stops.
What stops?
In desperation, she tries out The Substance, a new chemical that once injected allows for a younger, more perfect version of herself to literally come out of herself. Margaret Qualley stars as Sue, the younger version of Demi Moore's character. Elizabeth and Sue must switch every 7 days without exception, which leads to complications down the track, and that's putting it mildly. The Substance has been receiving rave reviews, with critics and fans listing The Substance as their favourite film of the year.
She's got a point, she's an icon, she's a legend, and she is the moment. Now come on now.
Demi and Margaret have received praise for their acting. The director, Coralie Fargeat, won Best Screenplay at the Cannes Film Festival.
Fargeat! His what?
His Fargeat, Dr. Evil.
His Ferger? It's a Ferger. His Fargeat!
The film is often remarked as being a takedown of the beauty and cosmetics industries and the double standards that face women when it comes to ageism and success.
Too bad her boobs aren't in the middle of her face instead of that nose.
This is one of my favourite movies of all time. It's right up there with my personal favourites such as Mulholland Drive, Mother, House on Haunted Hill, Final Destination 3. There's just so much I could talk about. So BP, I'll start with you. What were your overall thoughts on The Substance?
To sum it up quickly, I'd probably say this is something Ryan Murphy wished he would do in American Horror Story, because it literally felt like even American Horror Stories, if anyone's watched that, a bit of a plot out of that. But look, I had a really good time, and I'd say this is probably one of the highest rated ones I think we will review so far with this podcast. But yeah, had a really good time. Didn't really know what was going on going in, which was great. But yeah, left quite satisfied with this one.
Nice, 100% agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Coop, what are your overall thoughts?
I don't, as we know, I don't praise really good movies lightly. I reckon this is quite easily the, not only the best horror movie of the year, but easily the best movie I've seen this year and for a while. Like BP, I didn't really know a lot going in other than it was about someone sort of chasing their youth. And I'm so glad that I went in blind, because it's a hell of a ride. As you mentioned, sorry, what was the director that you mentioned that they wished that they could have done something like this?
Oh, Ryan Murphy. He's the creator of American Horror Story.
Yeah. I feel the same way about maybe Jordan Peele with all the extra title sequences and stuff. This is how you do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't wait to get into this one. It was an absolute pleasure.
I'm so glad to hear. I did have a worry that, because there's been so many instances in past episodes where I think a film is amazing, but then that's not necessarily the shared consensus. I thought, fuck, what if we get to the recording and it turns out BP's like, this is the worst movie ever. And Coop's like, I've already planned a petition to stop Demi Moore from being in horror movies, but I'm glad that you both feel the same.
Who are you more worried about, Justin, Coop, or myself?
More with Coop, actually. BB, I feel like you and I don't know, I feel like you and I are more, not honest per se, but if we both don't like something, you will immediately tell me through Instagram or Messenger. Whereas with Coop, I'm always like, do I ask or do I wait till the podcast to draw out the suspense?
I always try and save it, but sometimes I can't help myself.
Yeah. I just do cryptic codes through. Yeah.
SVU memes. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you think that there was a reason that the killer sodomized your husband with a banana?
He was allergic to bananas.
Honestly, I feel like this is the only first movie in memory that I can remember mulling over after I've watched it. Like literally, like the week that I watched it on the Monday, and for the rest of the week, there was nothing else I could think of. And I told so many friends, like, you need to go see this movie. It's insane. And I ended up watching it again on the Saturday. So twice in a week. If that's not high enough praise, I don't know what is. So really keen to have a chat about this one.
Oh yes.
Yep.
And for me especially, because I also saw this twice in 1 week. I first saw it with my partner, dragged my brother, been trying to get every other person I know to watch this, even if I don't think it's a film that I would necessarily love. I just want to hear their reaction to the final act, which is just insane.
The monster!
I have a lot of favorite parts, mostly the entire movie. But if I had to pick a few sequences, I really love the part where Elizabeth is aging because of the side effects from misusing the substance. And she's watching her younger self on the TV doing the interview, like the style of the Tonight Show or whatever. And she's just going crazy. She's like, tell them what your secret is. And she's cooking all the food.
Tell them who your little beauty secret is. I guess why don't we just show them right here? Here's your little beauty secret.
And then it cuts to the shot of her younger self saying, control yourself. And it turns out she smeared all the newspaper with the eggs and everything on the giant glass windows, the TV. It's that, and like, it's not necessarily scary, but you just think, holy shit, that's intense. And there's a lot of those type of sequences throughout. I also, there's that creepy neighbor who refuses to leave Sue alone. And he's like, it's a date. And he's fucking cringy and reminds me of a lot of people on Twitter. And then when she's her older self and she walks out of the house, she's like, fuck off. I couldn't stop laughing. I'm just like, yes, go off, sis.
Holy moly. Makes me want to join your class. Hey, you don't give private lessons, do you?
The one thing I really liked was the camera angles. They were, I guess, to summarize, delicate in a way, which kind of fit in with the theme and tone of the movie, which was really cool. So some really cool shots, especially like with the bathroom, like the hallway sort of scenes where it's sort of, you know, panning out or panning in. The scene with, as we just spoke before we recorded, the Dennis Quaid where he's eating the prawns and it's like a close up and it's disgusting and it's just juicy and I hate prawns.
I mean, that's just the way it is. So you know what I mean?
It was just like uncomfortable, but like it was good, like a good scene to watch because I just sort of thought, and then obviously Demi Moore. There were so many different scenes. The one scene I really liked, which I'll bring up in trivia later, was when she was trying to rub the makeup off. I found that really uncomfortable. Like, I know, and I was just thinking, like, it hurts me to watch her doing that. So, like, let alone me trying to like rub my face like she is. I thought that was really good. The teeth falling out, and then this scene behind me, I just could not stop laughing. And I think I literally was sitting there going, oh my God. She's not going to do that, is she? And then she's walking out on the red carpet and everyone's clapping her and she's got this going.
There she is, so beautiful.
And the crash scene actually was really cool as well. It actually was really well done. It wasn't, it sort of, yeah, actually was really well done scene. So a large proportion of this movie I really liked.
Oh, easy, Kimmy. First year driving?
Demi Moore is a fucking icon and did such a good job in this. I I honestly don't know where to begin. Like, I loved pretty much everything about this movie. I loved the social commentary on the way that Hollywood kind of eats and spits out women, and the insecurity that it sort of puts upon women, and that they're, you know, the time's running out and all that kind of thing, is just incredible. The way that the entire movie is kind of like a mirror to ourselves, and like the way that we overlook the way that we see people and turn them into a product was just mind-blowing.
You are the Matrix. Everything comes from you, and everything is you. This is simply a better version of yourself. You just have to share.
As BP mentioned, the cinematography was incredible. All the close-up scenes. When I was watching it, actually, I was sitting probably a lot closer to the front than I would have liked to have been, but it was perfect for this because of all the close-up scenes. Like immediately, like 5 minutes in, we're watching Dennis Quaid eat prawns close up, licking his lips. It just all the choices in the camera shots and the angles were perfect because the entire movie is uncomfortable, but at the same time really bright and colorful. I love that. Obviously the climax of the movie is insane. Absolutely insane. And like, it was one of those movies where all throughout I was like, they can't take it much further than this. Yeah, they can. They can.
Yeah.
The climax was amazing. The sort of cartoon way that all the CEOs and like big suits and stuff, the way that sort of like they're like critters sort of like skulking around was just amazing.
Next!
There was a lot of comedy to this movie as well, like as uncomfortable as it was, like you were always laughing at the same time as you're like, they're trying to make you gag. It was incredible. Everyone, there was not a single actor in this job that did badly. All performances were amazing. The gore was incredible. I've never seen a movie where someone coughs up a tit. That's insane. I love that. Love the homages to The Shining and Carrie, as we mentioned. Yeah, I could go on and on and on, but you know, I don't want to take away anyone else's time. Almost a perfect movie. Yeah.
Agreed. Speaking of references, there are a few to David Lynch's Mulholland Drive, which I swear we will cover in the future at some point. But even like the alleyway reminds me of the scene where it's behind Wiki's diner, close-ups of Demi Moore on the phone to the representative from the substance. I was like, hey, I've seen that before. And I'm glad you picked up on The Shining as well, because I was like, that red bathroom at the start looks a lot like the scene in The Shining where Jack Torrance is talking to the former, what do you call it, like groundskeeper, hotel manager.
Mr. Grady, you were the caretaker here. I recognize you.
Honestly, like the fact that it had me thinking about everything about this movie, like it's also not a very short film. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes. And the fact that it doesn't, like, you don't get bored watching it is one thing. The fact that you never know where it's going to go next is another thing. So obviously it keeps you hooked in, but just the fact that like it really is, like Coop said, is like a mirror on society, how we treat women, also how women view themselves as a result is, yeah, it's just insanely good. And, you know, like I said, I've told so many people to watch this movie just because of that aspect of the film. I don't care really about the body horror side. I'm like, look, if it is not your thing, I completely understand. But like this movie, like just really is really fucking good. And I watched a couple of interviews about it with the creator, and she basically just said like she developed this because she had turned 40 and had a feeling those feelings of like self-hatred and stuff that like she really just wanted to explore that. And obviously like with the gore factor and how violent it is, like self-violence, I guess, in a sense, especially with that scene where Demi's character Elizabeth is in the mirror trying to rub the makeup off her face. It's just like this woman hates herself so much. And like my first watch, like obviously I sat with it. My second watch, I just felt really sad
Yep.
in that second watch because you just really like once you begin to grasp the fact that like Elizabeth has absolutely no reason to hate herself. She is, you know, conditionally like conventionally very attractive. She's especially like for her age, which obviously shouldn't be a matter of factor like a factor into it anyway. But the fact that like, you know, she was always also like seeking external validation is just kind of like it's a never ending cycle. And that's why even if the substance was a solution, it never was going to be a solution for her. So obviously just like the whole theme about it, the practical effects, thank fuck. I don't think this movie would have been as well received or like as visually appealing if it was visual effects.
Yep.
And honestly, hats off to the team and for Demi and Margaret because I think Demi said she had days where she was literally sitting in the chair for like 7 to 8 hours.
Which hit his car in the rear. Your car hit his car.
It's such a sneaky way that the production team have stylized Demi Moore's own exercise show in this movie, where like she goes through the hallway, you've got the posters, and they're stylized like as if they're from the 80s, whereas in the movie it would have been like 2000 to 2005 that she would have been at the peak of this fitness show, and even the colors used, like in your background, Pablo. Margaret's got all the soft pastel pinks and everything's bright and bubbly. Whereas when it's any scenes with Demi Moore, it's a lot of yellows, dark blues, blacks. Even there's a clear shot where Margaret is like drinking a can of Diet Coke or something. And the music behind it, the bright imagery, the just like the soft hues and everything that's used in it to symbolize youth is just so done well.
The one thing I also wanted to highlight is like it's a very minimal. And I think like especially with the sets and stuff, like it feels very sterile, which I think they really needed to do to like highlight the themes of this movie. Like even the packaging for like the substance is very like minimalistic.
Yeah, it's very clean, very
which I thought was cool, which obviously kind of what makes up for the madness at the end of the movie.
It's quite a, I guess you sum her up, it's quite a cold feeling in a lot of those scenes.
100%. Especially with like the exchange between Sue and Elizabeth. Like I remember talking about it with friends afterwards, and I'm like, I don't know like why she couldn't have just, you know, put herself into like a bed or something, or why they had to be naked every time. But just I think it just adds to that like
cold and alone,
but also like less value. She felt less value towards herself.
That's interesting. I never actually thought of it that way. To me, I didn't really think of it too much. I was just like, oh yeah, maybe she just wanted to hide herself away from if she was to bring potential people over or whatever. But there is that one shot where Elizabeth, after a few misuses of the substance, she's just like smacking her head in the shower, and then the camera goes up, and it looks like she's just in a stuck wall, like with the ceiling. The walls are like 50 feet tall, and I'm like, wow, that's very claustrophobic. That makes me uncomfortable.
Remind me of Cube.
Yeah. I could. We need to cover Cube at some stage.
Are you out of your mind?
When it comes to least favorite parts, I struggled to think of some. The only thing that I could think was I wasn't sure at the end of the movie when she's in the monstrous self and she's attending the New Year's Eve party thing. I couldn't work out like why were some of the women naked during this New Year's Eve telecast when it's supposed to be for TV and there's kids in the audience. But then I thought maybe I'm overthinking it. That was the only, not even flaw, just maybe I just got that scene wrong.
You want to go into that nonsense? I'm all yours.
The only gripe that I had, but then it was like a positive and negative, I guess sort of the third act, as in like this scene was kind of a bit ridiculous in a way, but then I was laughing and then it was actually really enjoyable because I was just thinking there's no way she's going to go like this to like the red carpet. And then she did. And then I was just like, oh my God. And then when she's on stage and it's just that, and there's no like applause, there's nothing. couldn't really think of anything. I know I'm pretty critical on run times. I know like at the hour mark, I paused it, and it was quite all the way. Like the story had progressed quite a lot, and I was sort of wondering how they're going to fill an hour and 20 left on this, but they did a good job of it. But it's probably one of the few movies I've got very few things to comment on. I mean, the girl in Pablo's one, what's her name in real life?
Margaret Qualley.
Yeah. I mean, I the acting of Demi Moore and Dennis Quaid, I thought was like phenomenal. But she's all right. I haven't really seen her in anything else. So I'm not too sure if she's actually quite good or not, or if she's new or not. But yeah, nothing really that was a gripe. I think it was pretty good. I don't think they could have tightened it up any more. I think they did a really good job.
Yeah. And I mean, Dennis Quaid is an asshole in real life, so like, no wonder he got hired for that.
Didn't really have to tap into anything there, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
Coop, did you have any least favorite parts?
Not really. Like this is about as close to, in my opinion, like as flawless a movie as you get for what it was trying to achieve. What I will do just for a bit of fun, is address some of the flaws that I've seen people mention online.
Oh, let's go. Let's go. I'm happy to go into this.
Yeah. So one of the things that people touch on is like, oh, but Demi Moore's really attractive. That's literally the point of the movie. Shut the fuck up. Another thing was, there's like, it's meant to be like a feminist movie, but then there's so many butts and boobs. Again, that's literally the fucking point. It's a mirror. Third thing is, the climax of the movie. People are like, oh, but it just got so silly throughout the end. Were you watching the rest of the movie? Yeah, those, I just keep seeing that online as like people sort of trying to put down the movie and saying it's silly, and it's like, we're not watching the same movie. Like, really watch this movie. And yeah, so I just thought I'd touch on that. Otherwise I don't have any flaws.
Yeah. Pablo and I were talking about this the other day, where just, I don't know if you two are on Twitter, but Twitter is as cesspool as it is anyway. But I find that any discourse about this movie tends to be either really positive or it is the most stupidest takes known to man. Pablo, do you want to talk more about that?
Oh God, let's go. I think it was the same person that you were referencing, Coop, but it was them like, are we really supposed to are we really supposed to sympathize with Demi Moore, who's a conventionally attractive woman in this movie? And I'm like, yes, that is the point of the movie. The point of the movie and the reason why it's such a tragic story is the fact that there was literally nothing wrong with Elizabeth Sparkle. The only issue that she had was she was always seeking that external validation. And like, even with the recent rewatch, because I was watching it before this, like a lot of the symbolism as well, like, in the beginning where they're showing the like life of the star of the Hollywood Walk of Fame, there's that moment where she's actually on the star and she's wearing the same outfit that she's wearing in the Snow Globe. And for me, I think that kind of highlights like that for her was her pinnacle moment. That's where she felt most valued. That's where she valued herself the most. And that's kind of like a high that she was seeking, because I feel like there was also themes of addiction in this movie. And obviously seeking that external validation and, with social media and likes and stuff, like it brings out those endorphins. And it's like a high that she's always chasing. So if you have an issue with this movie, it's because you don't understand the movie. That's on you. It doesn't make it a bad movie. It just means you don't have the empathy to kind of like relate to this story or this character at all. So if you're saying, are we supposed to relate to the character? Yes, you are.
We are done.
But yeah, honestly, I feel like we could do like a 3-hour podcast on this movie. It's just so fucking good. It's just so good. In terms of finding any negatives in this movie, there's not really much I could say about it. I feel like my first watch, I felt like the pacing was a bit off. Like it felt like a bit long to get to places, but my second watch, it was fine. It could have been it was a late night session because that was the only time that Hoyts wanted to show it locally. I was getting to like 10 and 10, 11, and I'm like, okay, like, come on, I want to get to bed soon. But yeah, honestly, not much. Apparently, they're probably just the bad takes, and that's about it. Like, I feel like first watch, I thought maybe there was a bit too much nudity, but also that's kind of the point where, it kind of needs to be that naked, stark, harsh reality. And like I said, like having it being that cold and like sterile environment, and kind of just taking these characters down to their roots, which is just, their bodies, which is also like a theme in the movie. Because there's obviously themes of like body dysmorphia and stuff as well, which is very hard topics to, explore, let alone a movie. And, how violently it is as well. So yeah, not much. Dennis Quaid is an asshole. That's about it. Let's move on.
Yeah, exactly. Can I just say, just on that, just reminded me that I thought it was really clever the way that, and I think it was about an hour and a half, nearly 2 hours into the movie, after seeing all the butts and bums, there was a close up of like her boyfriend or whatever over, and there was a close up of his bum that was like the only male butt in the entire movie.
Yeah.
Like all the other people that were in the cinema like laughed. Oh, like man butt. It was just like, okay.
It wasn't a transition from her butt to his butt. It was like one or the other, and I was like, oh yeah.
I thought that was really clever because it just really shows you just how desensitized we are to kind of like the objectification of women. It's just like, oh, it's a man's butt. Like, come on.
And it's funny, like what you said, Pablo, because I feel like the nudity in this movie was quite natural in the sense that it wasn't meaning a quota like some directors are, where they need to just force it on the audience. I think it was quite natural, even with the scenes like the mirror scenes and stuff like that. I don't feel like it was purposely trying to, have long shots of nudity. I think it was justified in what was being shown, which is good. Whereas like I said, with Ryan Murphy, he's very sexual in a lot of his stuff, even American Horror Story, and it can sound a bit forced that he's just trying to like put a sex scene in, or like someone walking naked. Like it doesn't need to be like that, but
exactly.
According to him, it does in every single episode. And
don't get me started on Ryan Murphy. that recent Netflix show was such a piece of shit.
Just bleep him out in this if you want. People
no, fuck Ryan Murphy. I hate him. Like the only good thing he ever did was Pose, the TV show, and he only directed one episode.
Thank you.
Like everything else, like I'm sorry, it's such a good contrast because that Menendez Brothers project or whatever it is on Netflix, Ryan Murphy has changed it so that the brothers are incestuous with each other, and it's so fucking weird because that is not what happened in real life. So he made the decision to change it for that manner. That's fucking weird. Now, if it happened to be that that's what happened in real life, for the sake of authenticity, sure. But all the trailers make it look like, woo, isn't this hot and isn't this so Brad and isn't... I just use Brad for everything now. Isn't this like so hot and steamy and shit like that? That's like, no, that's fucking weird and creepy. Why are you doing this? Like,
and the fact that like after he got backlash for that exact thing, he's like, well, there was a theory that's going on in time, and it's like, I decided to use it as to kind of like reflect that. And I'm like, we see through you, dude. You always like hire the same like hot, young, attractive white guys, and you just show them as naked as you can as possible, and that's that. Yeah. So let's do let's see him take this subject on with the same amount of grace, and
There's no way he would.
But like one thing. Oh, sorry. You go.
I was just going to say I have also seen people drawing correlations between this movie and Death Becomes Her, which we kind of get. Like it's the way the subject of like chasing youth and eternal life and all that kind of thing.
Do you remember where you parked the car?
But I just feel like they're so different, and like I feel like comparing the two kind of drags down the legacy of both. Like they should be viewed as like very separate things. I mean, I love Death Becomes Her; it's a great movie, but
If the way that my partner was explaining it to friends, I think just like obviously just kind of bring it down to his roots. He's like, it's Death Becomes Her meets The Fly.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
Like it's very much that's kind of like how they explore it. One thing I thought was interesting because I was watching the interviews after the Cannes Film Festival, and some of the questions were just so wild. Like there was this one person who was like, asking what Demi Moore did to prepare for like the nude scenes in this movie, and it was from a woman as well. And I'm like, the fact that you had the time to come and ask these questions, and that's the one question you choose to ask this person, like you're kind of just adding to the situation in this movie where it's like, you know, you have this movie that's just so well, like, thought-provoking, and that's the one thing you want to ask. Is insane to me.
That was your job!
There is some interesting trivia here. I feel that we've touched on this in our previous segment, but just first thing right off the bat on IMDb is that Demi Moore said that she was nervous about filming full nudity at age 61 and felt quite vulnerable, as you can imagine. But she credited her co-star Margaret, who was 29 at the time of filming and obviously portrays a younger version of her character, with making her feel comfortable on set. Qualley also performed totally naked, yes, with the prosthetics. Moore said that she found someone who was a great partner who I felt very safe with. We obviously were quite close naked, and we also got a lot of levity in those moments and how absurd those certain situations are, especially those scenes where it's like her falling on top of Demi Moore when they do the switch and everything. That would have been so hard to film. Like, even just from a logistics point of view, you think you got this entire team of like 50 to 100 people on set who are watching you completely naked, minus a few prosthetics here and there, and you've got to perform with Demi Moore. Like, that must be so intimidating.
So that's the thing with these productions. It's not like what the director and a camera. It's like tens of people in a small space.
People.
Yeah, easily.
And even the scene where it's the pump it up, like in your background, Pablo, like there's just so many close-ups of like her legs and everything. And I know that it was making fun of just how sexualized culture has become, where everything's so close up and pornographic. And sorry, I need to point this out too. In that scene where they do the pump it up, so all the girls have got like the very tight leotards and everything. The two guys are wearing shorts and singlets, and I thought, that's a funny contrast. But yeah, back to the trivia. So Demi Moore, as we know, was 61 years old at the time of shooting the film, but in the movie, she's supposed to be 50 years old. So 11-year age difference.
I honestly thought she looked. I thought she looked 50, and I thought Dennis Quaid was like 55 or 60. I didn't know he's 70.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Wrap it up, Grandpa.
After we just like spoke about ages. In several interviews, Demi Moore said that reading the script for The Substance reminded her of the script for Ghost, of course, the infamous 1990 film that Demi Moore starred in, because the chance that this movie, The Substance, could be amazing or a disaster was the same. That was crucial for her to accept the role. And it was actually one of the first horror movies that Demi Moore had started in at least like 20 to 30 years from memory. Like she got her start in horror. So it's kind of like that full circle moment.
There's one I have, Justin, which was about the makeup. I said about the face rubbing, which is taking up all the makeup. So the Marie Claire, I think it's what you say, the magazine. So the makeup artist said, just reading a quote, "We did that, I think, 10 times. My primary concern was Demi's face. All of the pads were already wet with product for her to not have too much to start with, but Demi is Demi, so she went for it. So it was like, oh my God, she's going to have eyelashes all around and all of that." And then in another quote, it just said, "You cannot have more because tomorrow she'll have a red face. Normally you don't do that, but it was too much because it's very hard on her skin." Even though it's just like a makeup pad, but just the way that she's,
that scene is fucking terrifying.
And I know it was in the trailer, and I like expected it. Like in the trailer, it was like still like, but then actually seeing it, the full scene
context,
yeah. Especially just the feeling of her like canceling on that guy, and she must have felt so worthless, so ashamed. Whenever that seeing her do that, I mean, not that I wear makeup or anything, but I've definitely had moments in my life where I'm like, that's it, I'm not going to this thing, or I'm not going to go on this date, whatever. And it's just like, damn, that really brought me back to some of those moments.
And a lot of people said that on Twitter. They're like, they've literally had that moment, and it's so devastating to like just have it in front of you like that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have felt said like after seeing this movie, they're going to be a lot kinder to themselves, which I think is a great takeaway for this movie.
Yeah. Agreed. So interesting trivia. Demi Moore wasn't actually the director it wasn't her first pick. So during a meeting in Paris, Demi Moore gave the director a copy of her 2019 memoir, which then convinced the director to cast her due to its depiction of her relationship to her body during the early and peak years of her film career. So, of course, that would have been, I mean, I don't think there was necessarily a peak for Demi Moore. She's always been around. But, you know, if you were to look at it from a box office point of view, maybe the 90s, and especially when, like, her naked body was always on the cover of movies like Striptease, for instance. Like, I remember that movie appearing on, like, Channel 7 back in, like, early 2000s. It's like, whoa, like, that's not a movie you watch with parents or, you know, things like that.
Yeah.
So I like that that's why Coralie, the director, chose her. Demi Moore, also speaking of her autobiography, which is called Inside Out, Demi quoted the movie critic Roger Ebert, who had observed intriguing to watch her work with the image of her body from the same era released by polar opposite body portrayals in G.I. Jane, in which she's bald-headed, and Striptease, the movie I just mentioned, plus earlier in movies like Indecent Proposal, 1993, and Disclosure, 1994. And all these women test the tension between a woman's body and a woman's ambition and will, to which Moore remarked then, it's gratifying someone smart got this. So, yeah, I think that's interesting. It also received, so The Substance received the longest standing ovation out of all the films shown at the 2024 Cannes Film Festival, which is, you know, I believe that.
Yeah.
A bit of funny trivia. So one of Margaret Qualley's favorite movies is The Parent Trap, 1998, starring Lindsay Lohan. That movie also starred Dennis Quaid, who briefly dated her mother, Andie MacDowell. So another bit of a full circle moment. The film is partly inspired by Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray, which is about a man who manages to avoid aging by allowing the signs of aging to appear on a painting of him instead of his real body. However, instead of merely showing the signs of aging, the portrait ends up becoming progressively more monstrous as a reflection of Dorian Gray's immoral behavior, just as Elizabeth's body starts to decay quickly when Sue tries to abuse the substance. And in the movie, Gray hides the portrait by moving it to a more private room of his house and ends up stabbing it. And of course, as we know, in The Substance, Sue pokes a hole in the poster of Elizabeth that hangs in the living room when she throws it, and ends up hiding it in the secluded room as well, but then brings it back out to dress up for the premiere at the end. Oh, actually, actress Margaret Qualley confirmed at the TIFF, that's Toronto International Film Festival, that she was inside the prosthetic of Monstro at the end of the film. So it was her and Demi Moore.
Yeah. You know, when you said that, Justin, I thought of, has anyone seen that ET thing where Heidi Klum's in the worm?
Oh, my
yes.
That's what it reminded me of, because I was like, it'd probably be something like that. And because Heidi Klum looks so realistic in that worm. I actually went and looked at it after this film. I was like, holy shit, she's in the worm.
Yeah, I saw it like a behind the scenes, like it was just like a little short on Instagram of Margaret Qualley in the Alyssa Sue costume and kind of just like laughing into the camera, like, oh, here we go. Like, yeah, didn't look very comfortable, but you know, props to her.
Oh, it's just insane.
Oh, here you go. The constant spraying of blood caused the latex bodysuit to turn pink as it became saturated quickly. The suit required repainting, resewing, and drying after each day. To maintain cleanliness and sanitation, the crew also sprayed vodka inside the suit every night. So,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Admittedly, I don't know what Mubi is, the TV film studio or whatever. I assume it's similar to A24. Substance is now Mubi's highest grossing film. So
also,
I think that'll be one to watch.
One thing I also found out was Universal are actually attached to the film at this point and dropped out during filming, which I feel like they're probably kicking themselves over now because it's now Mubi's, like you said, #1 highest grossing film. And honestly, I think it's like 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. Like, I don't feel like no one's hated this movie.
It's been doing good at the box office. It's been a slow burn, even though it's like dropping theaters and stuff in America and Australia, but it's still holding really well. And I think it's just word of mouth, to be honest, is really driving this movie, which is, it's really good to see these like low budget, even like Terrifier, these low budget horror films actually make some money at the box office and not be like a Joker incident or, you know, these other massive budgets and just, you know, poor
Yeah.
performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really great point, BP. Sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, you don't need, if it's a good movie and particularly something like this, you don't need a multi-million-dollar marketing budget. And
Yeah.
I'm, as we'll talk about with Smile 2 when we get to that, sometimes I'm always a bit like, is there a reason they're throwing all this shit at the wall because they're worried it's not going to do well, you know?
Yeah. When it comes down to Spare Roots, if it's a good concept, if it's executed well, it's going to be a good movie.
Yep.
And especially with the fact, like, I feel like there's not much dialogue in this movie either. If you think about it, especially in the first section, it's mostly just shots of Elizabeth going places.
Yeah.
And one thing I
frantically
noticed,
walking. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like
Making my way
something
downtown.
on my second watch, there's a lot of mirroring between that daily scene as well.
It's the same thing. Same
it's like the same kind of routine. And another thing I noticed was like the palm trees kept changing. I didn't know what that meant significantly, like the amount that between those scenes kept changing. So
I feel like those daily scenes got faster and faster and more frantic with the camera work, just like kind of getting in the mind of her, trying to get this substance. Yeah.
You and Coop brought up about positive word of mouth and how like this is different to the Joker. Bloody Joker followed you. So I completely agree. This didn't have much marketing behind it. It wasn't wall to wall. Like this doesn't have posters on every bus in Sydney or Brisbane or like massive billboards everywhere like Joker followed you has. And yet this movie is much more critically acclaimed. Audiences love it, higher ratings everywhere. And it is starting to build up with the whole word of mouth going around. Whereas the complete opposite has happened for Joker 2, where like bad word of mouth. So even the box office, projections for Joker 2 were initially something like $80 to $100 million. And then it just got slashed to 20 to 30 billion for the opening weekend. Because it had like a month of bad reviews. And no doubt that would have left some people being like, maybe I don't want to watch this jukebox musical with Miss Gaga in it and stuff like that. And so that's tanked that box office. Terrifier 3, you mentioned BP. Like that's also now the #1 movie in America. It broke box office records for previous Terrifier films and the distributor, which kept me. Actually, I don't know if this is correct. I know bloodydisgusting.com is part of the production studio, but I don't know if they're distributor.
Yeah,
so I'm not sure how that works.
Well, like touching on what Coop said earlier, to be honest, this year's been really like woeful for horror movies that have come out. There's just been a slate of crap horror movies in general that have come out. Luckily, I haven't paid money to go see most of them because the poster enough has turned me off. But there's just that it just feels like they're churning them out. And I mean, the poster on this isn't really eye-catching. I mean, like the green, the sterile, the needle, like you look at it, there's a lot of like, I don't like it when critics put reviews on posters. It kind of turns me off. And they're like, especially if it's a shit film and you're like, well, his words don't make,
like who trying to convince you?
Yeah. But I think it was like the minimalist sort of approach. And I think the word of mouth and yeah, I think it's just something different, and it's Demi Moore and it's Dennis Quaid, so there's fans somewhere there for both of them, and more for Demi Moore to be honest. So, but yeah, it's good to sort of see something like this, and I think it sort of puts these other ones on notice, particularly with the other episodes we're going to talk about.
Agreed.
7 days.
Oh my god, I'm gonna die next Monday?
Yes. No, wait, Monday? That would be 7 business days.
In terms of ratings and final thoughts, I am going to give this movie 10 out of 10.
Wow.
I can't think of any flaws too big or too noticeable, whatever, to knock off a point or even half a point here and there. I don't think there are any ways to improve this movie. Like, I can't say like, oh, Margaret and Demi should have acted this way or production design should have been different this way. Like, this really surprised me. I was very surprised by this movie. So yeah, go see it if you haven't watched it. Don't watch trailers. Don't even listen to this podcast. How are we going to do that? Yeah, just go watch it. BP, what are your ratings and final thoughts?
Look, I'm going to give it a 9. I had a really good time with this. Yeah, I mean, any horror fanatic. I even think someone that's new to horror, or wants to even watch it, like it might get a bit gnarly and a bit gory in some bits, but I mean, there's a good message behind it. Fantastic performances from everyone in the movie, great music, great camera work. It's just something new to the horror genre, and like I just said earlier, it puts a lot of these other filmmakers on notice to up their game and bring something new to the table, instead of churning out the same crap that we see. But yeah, look, I had a really good time, and it was just refreshing to see something new in the horror genre. So yeah, 9.
Excellent. Coop?
I had given it some thought of sort of what the rating was going to be for this. After thinking about it, I'm also going to give it 10 out of 10 because I don't think there's nothing that they could have added to make this any better. It's groundbreaking, it's new, it's, as Pablo said, it sits with you. You sit there thinking about this movie and you dissect it over and over again, and it's just, it couldn't be any better for what it is. So I'm going to give it 10 coughed up tits out of 10.
Nice. And last but not least, Pablo.
I'm also going to give this a 10. Like I said earlier, like I felt like my first watch, maybe the pacing was off, but on my second watch, it was fine. Like I said, there's not really much else you can add to this movie to make it any better. I'm begging that studios can back off and not do a sequel. Because I was also very surprised that there was a lot of people that weren't complaining about like, where did the substance come from, and the whole backstory to it. Because I'm like, sometimes it's good to live this, like, sit with this mystery, with this thing, and just sit and reflect on what we were presented. Yeah, honestly, everything is fantastic in this movie. I've told so many people to watch it. I'm telling everyone now, go watch it if you can. I believe it's out in VOD in 2 weeks as well. So if you can't go see it in cinemas, it'll be available to watch digitally. Support the fuck out of this movie. That's all I can say. It's so fucking good.
BP, Coop, and Pablo, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you
for having me.
Thanks for having us.
Listeners, keep an eye out. We have more episodes coming, including Smile 2, Maxine, and Speak No Evil, the US remake. We have very strong opinions on all of those movies. Check out our podcast, check out our TikTok, Instagram. We've got everything, you name it, we have it. And if you didn't like this movie,
Back off!